as an entrepreneur, are there any other businesses you've kind of had on your mind? And
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I
yeah.
have a lot. So I had a business before Open Aerial. I had an agency for sign language interpreters because so I went to school here for interpreting and then COVID happened. I lived in Seattle and that was when I like got my first big jobs as an interpreter. And in California, there's a lot of agencies where like an interpreter or a business person opens an agency and calls it like Interpreters Incorporated. And then doctors and lawyers and any business that needs an interpreter finds them online and schedules it. And they don't schedule the interpreter directly. And when I lived in Washington, the culture was like immediately everyone works for like government subsidized stuff, which was great because I did mostly medical and that worked for me. But I kind of got hip to the fact that if you're a receptionist at a dentist office and you get a deaf patient come in and says, if I don't have an interpreter, it's against the law. You need to procure an interpreter in the next hour. You're just going to Google it. So I just made a website. I called it MetaTerp. And that was actually a whole LLC and everything and had a software and it would schedule. It was basically just me, but our website looked like it was a whole agency. And if there was a gig I couldn't do, I referred it to my friends. And that was only possible in Washington. It's not possible here because the culture of the private versus public stuff. But if I did want to live in Seattle, which I prefer to live in Newport right now, but if I did want to live in Seattle one day, I would. Or if there's any interpreters that live in Seattle right now that want to try that, that worked for me. I loved that. And then my favorite idea is I hate putting gas in my car. I do not want to put gas in my car by myself as a young lady, especially if it's dark or if it's raining. Guess that was more of an issue when I lived in a place where it rained a lot, got dark early. But I had the idea of the services that fill your car up at your house for you. And those are really popular in Dubai specifically. They just don't have a lot of like physical gas stations, but they have a lot of people that drive. And I actually tried to use one of those services once and they actually told me they couldn't service me because my car's behind a gate and they don't do that. It has to be parked on the street. But I loved that idea for the longest time. I was like, I'm going to have all these trucks and they're going to be filled with gasoline. And in the middle of the night, we're just going to fill up everybody's car with gas and no one's ever going to have to get gas again. That was one of my favorite ideas.
It's interesting because how do you go and take something to a mass scale of customers? It just, I mean, the bigger the problem you're solving, the more impact you're having on the world. And then obviously the more you get compensated for it. But from an impact standpoint, I mean, you sit there and you think of, hey, Uber's like, we're just going to have this thing in the palm of your hands where you can call a car to come and pick you up anytime, any place, wherever you are. And it's like all of a sudden, guess what? We don't have to call a taxi anymore.
Yeah, they fix a huge problem. And a lot of people, when they hear people that own businesses talk about owning their businesses and scaling, they do think it is about revenue. But like what you said, it's like, well, we really only end up getting paid in a way that's congruent to the problem we're solving. So
Yeah.
it as long as you are seriously trying to help people and solve their problem, as long as your business is set up correctly, then it will result in revenue that you deserve. But it's not as likely that if you have ill intentions that you would make the revenue that you're looking for. And Uber is also my favorite example of earlier we were talking about collaborating, competing. Uber and Lyft are both huge successful companies that do the same thing. And most people have both apps on their phone and they both employ tons of people and make tons of money and they're both coexisting.
Yeah. No, and it's interesting because it's like you've got all these people building businesses, and it's like there is in many industries enough market share to go around. Obviously, Uber and Lyft, their best interest is to work together to uplift and expand the total addressable market of the people using the rideshare apps.
Have
Obviously,
you
there are certain times they want to cut into each other's market share when they can. Sometimes they compete on prices. Sometimes they go on Lyft and Lyft is cheaper. Sometimes they go on
Lyft's
Uber and
usually
Uber's
cheaper,
cheaper.
yeah.
But it you go and you see, but yeah, but Uber could be more available at times. So it's like different companies have their different, or certain wait times can be more or less depending on what you want, or if you want the XL car or whatever. So, but or the Uber Black, whatever you prefer. But you have at the end of the day the best thing that they can both do is collaborate and work together to increase the total addressable market for the entire space. And then whatever their market share is, their market share is. But if it's bigger, there's more to go around for that segment of the business.
Yeah, just the more people you can get on relying on that. I mean, have you ever been somewhere that doesn't have Uber? Like, did Mykonos, was it hard to call a car in Mykonos?
Mykonos had cars,
Okay.
so that was simple enough over there. But there was when we were in Crete, I believe you had to specifically like call,
Yeah,
like for a
like
taxi.
get a phone number
Yeah,
from reception at your hotel.
and so it's also interesting to see how different countries have different infrastructures
Yeah.
that are developed different ways. Or, I mean, obviously within a place like Greece, different islands have different
Yep.
infrastructures and are more developed or less developed. And it's interesting to see just all the technological breakthroughs that we've had here in the US over the last few years that allow us to do more. And it's like, I remember when I was growing up, and we were taking math classes at school, the teachers would always say, "Oh, you need to make sure to show your work. It's not like you're going to have a calculator on you at all times when you're growing up." And I sit there and I think about that example pretty often now because it's like, hello, I literally have a calculator on me at all
Better than
times.
that, I asked ChatGPT math problems. Like, I'll be like, "What's this percent of that number?"
Yeah.
I'll voice note it and it'll tell me.
Yeah.
It's even
So
better
it's
than a
like,
calculator.
so guess what? To all the math teachers in fourth and fifth grade or whatever it was, I don't actually have to show my work. I could just punch it into a calculator and get my answer.
And what that looks like right now is professors and teachers, a lot of them have very differing opinions on using AI. I think if someone's, and this is something that they instilled to us for interpreting, was it's impossible to cheat with interpreting, because if someone tells you something and you know how to say it in the output language, regardless of how you pulled it off, you could do that at work. So whatever allowed you to figure out how to pull that off, replicate that at work. So if somebody has an assignment at school and they can use ChatGPT to do the assignment, it's like, well, is that the assignment you're going to be getting paid to do? As long as the quality works there and you're not copy and pasting and making it really obvious, right? Because we've all seen that. But if it can be a tool to help you at work, I think that's great. And they should be allowed to use it.